Thanks for tuning into Talking Point. I'm your host, Niraj Shah. Well, it's important to assess what large brands, particularly the consumer-facing brands, are talking about 6 months into the pandemic. We had a conversation with multiple such companies 3 months into the pandemic, wherein the situation was a bit unclear. Does it still remain hazy? And if so, how hazy? And what kind of clarity do some of these businesses have about the next 6 months? Now, remember, our guest today is Mr. Sandeep Kataria, CEO of Bata India, and they're coming on the back of what on a headline basis may have looked like an iffy FY20, but had some very strong underlying trends. The question only is, can these trends get solidified in FY21 itself, or could it be difficult to portray that and maybe look at FY22? Mr. Kataria, good having you. Thanks much for joining in. 6 months out, Mr. Kataria, how are things looking for such a strong consumer-facing brand like Bata?
Thanks for having me on the show, Niraj. Well, I think we are still pretty much in the pandemic. We're now beginning to come out. Things are slowly but steadily improving. And we're hoping that the festive season, which is usually a very important part of the year for fashion and footwear businesses, will help us get that last bit up as well.
Would you say that that would also be a factor of not just the pent-up demand, but how well are brands like you, for example, able to reach the consumer? Have you tried to look at innovative ways of channel distribution or some other ways in order to maybe even reach demand that you may not know existed because the traditional forms of sales are now slightly different?
No, absolutely, Niraj. On that front, I think this whole last 3 to 4 months after the unlock have been quite an amazing piece of innovation, going back to the consumer, listening more than I think we've ever done, then being agile like never before to be able to address those demands. And let me give you a couple of those examples. When we unlock happened, we realized that a lot of people who are walking into our stores, we were missing two of our key segments, the youngsters, the kids, and also the slightly older people, both of which are very strong target segments for us. And therefore, out of that, the idea came about saying, how can we reach them? Because they're not also the most digitally savvy target segments very often. And therefore, we started off what we started calling the Bata Store on Wheels, kiosks, which we set up very close to our consumers in condominiums, in sector markets right next to them where they did not have to move out. And it was a pleasant surprise for us what we were able to get to, the kind of response we got. And as you would expect, that also sparked off other ideas for us. When we went in there, we went in with, as we expected, kids' shoes and also very easy, comfortable shoes for the elderly, and chappal, sandals, etc. And we realized that while there was demand, of course, for that, there was also demand for other things. And now, because we could not carry everything, that gave birth to our on the digitally assisted channel for us, where we were able to take tabs, show to our consumers there, and book orders to be delivered the day after. So it's been, as I said, a great period of listening in to be agile and then catering our solutions to that.
It's interesting. You're almost taking the brand to the doorstep of the consumer. The question is, are these things which you obviously had to do because of the pandemic, but can any of these be continued in the future well after the pandemic as well, because the success might have been really sweet? I mean, is there any sense on that?
Yeah, I think, Niraj, there's a number of these things which I think will continue. We are fortunate to have one of the deepest networks in the country. With our 1,500 stores, we go into many, many towns. And as we started this particular initiative, just to spell a little bit more about it, we started it with the big towns, the Delhis, the Mumbais of the world, but we realized there was demand for this pretty deep down. And because you have the stores which have the merchandise, because we do have a completely linked inventory across our stores, we can actually serve consumers quite seamlessly. And we realized that this channel could be an ongoing opportunity for us. Another one was WhatsApp calling and placing orders through that. One of the things that maybe worth also talking is that we realized that even digitally, there were three sets of consumers. There was the digital native, who's been buying from us on Bata.in or through one of the marketplaces that we participate in. Then there was a second set of consumers, which are digital adopters, people who have over the last 3-4 years, as internet has become far more available, more easily available, have come onto it. They were using a lot of things like WhatsApp. And how do we use that to again have commerce with them, come closer to them? And the third one, of course, was people who are just about digital novices or who are a little hesitant to use digital still. The third one is what I just talked about, which is showing them on a tab with them. But the second piece, which is the digital adopters, gave us the idea of saying, okay, how do we reach out to them? How do we use WhatsApp calling? How do we use video discussions to be able to make the choice? Always having a face to them of the brand. Our store managers, who are very adept at understanding, who really also know their customers really well, using that proximity to be able to get the right product for them, and then because you're quite close to them, deliver it quite quickly. And financially, the financial transaction can happen absolutely contactless once the product has been delivered to them.
Okay, so just wondering, because you're talking so much about tech. About a few months ago, I was talking to HDFC Life, and they said that they are no longer just a life insurance company; they are an insure tech company. Almost everybody likes to call themselves with a bit of a tech feature enabled to them. Do you think COVID-19 kind of makes a retail company like Bata become a retail tech company of sorts inwardly? Because you already had your presence probably on Bata.in or on Amazon, Flipkart, what have you. My question is, does this accelerate that process of you yourself becoming a retail tech company of sorts? More investments, more sales to the tech platforms?
Yeah, Niraj, I think I wouldn't go as far as calling us a tech company, because I think on tech we have realized that the best way to do it is to be very open, go in with open innovation to be able to tie up. And today's technology allows us and everybody, in fact, to do bolt-ons and really take advantage of all the tech available. So that's what we've been, very open to it. There is no doubt that the pandemic has accelerated our adoption even further than what it was earlier. So give you another example of open innovation. One of the challenges consumers have is while ordering through a WhatsApp channel or online was sometimes to figure out how to know their exact size, especially for children, where sizes do change quite often. We adopted a very simple app called, we call it Find My Size, which you can use from any phone, any smartphone, which takes a quick picture, tells you exactly the Bata size for you, but also gives us information about the girth and what would be the right fit for you. So I think the idea here is to be open, to make sure that you have the backbone, which is able to adopt, which is able to bolt on innovation from wherever it comes. Internally, be open to it, I think, more than be a tech company, I would say.
No, yeah. I didn't mean in the strictest sense, but yeah, just that.
Well, there are some who
might.
Yeah.
Okay, fair call. Now let's talk about demand. When I look at FY20 and somebody did your annual report analysis, which I was going through, which said that your average age of consumers has reduced from, I think it was 39 in FY19 to 36. Now, is it a factor of maybe more kids and children starting to adopt more of Bata shoes, or do you think you've redesigned your product portfolio in a way that the youth, which is not exactly children, but which is starting to earn or in the 20 to 35 age bracket, have seen an increased purchasing of your brand?
So Niraj, I think it's a combination of all. It was really the first leg of the strategy we adopted about 3 to 4 years ago. when we looked at it, evaluated it, I had come on board in 17. We went back, we talked to consumers. The one thing was that we were missing out on the younger population, which is coming into it. We had consumers who had grown up with us, who had worn our school shoes. And then we had people who would come in to buy their office shoes, their formals. But sometimes the 18 to say 30 we were not getting enough of our market share from them. And that's where we went back and understood what they really needed, heard them, spent time with them. And therefore, a whole lot of things got started from there, starting from, of course, the assortment, the products that we were carrying, the range that we would have, the colors that we would have. Second thing was, what would our stores look like? How could we make them more inviting to our consumers? The third, and I think once we were sure we had the assortment and we had the stores which were inviting, going on media and using the advertising campaign with our Bollywood celebrities to really get consumers interested, but doing it in an authentic Bata way. So we did not shy away. We actually took the things that we've been hearing from consumers, used that, converted that into our communication so that we could talk and be relevant to these consumers. We've actually seen the average age, as we track through our surveys, drop year and a half every year. We think this is absolutely the way we would want it to go. There are more youngsters coming into our stores to shop now than ever before.
Interesting. So what does all of this lead you to for the second half of the current year? We are on the cusp of the festive season. Do you anticipate a really good festive season, and not relative to the first 6 months, because they would have been really bad, but on an absolute basis, do you expect it to be a good festive season, a normal festive season, or is it difficult to predict?
Yeah, I think this is a little bit of a difficult, it's a crystal ball kind of a space that you're pushing us. The reality is consumers, I think, still are a little hesitant to step out. Having said that, this extended lockdown has got us wanting to step out. It's been quite a long period being stuck indoors. As consumers have now, all of us, in fact, have figured out that we need to start living with COVID rather than in fear of COVID. As long as we are all taking up precautions as we step out, we are seeing people step out. In the festive season, I think people will want to indulge in these small luxuries like new footwear, even though the big the big celebrations which happen with society, with large parties, etc., may not happen this year. But the gifting, the celebratory mood of the festivals, I think, is bound to happen. That usually is a good time of the year for us, and I think it will help us inch further closer to pre-COVID levels. I would not go as far as saying it will bring everything back to normal, but we are hopeful it will get us quite close to pre-COVID levels.
Boy, the country needs that, Mr. Kataria. Just wondering though, this whole work from home environment, does it dampen an existing market or not? Because I'm just thinking about myself. I haven't felt the need to buy a shoe now for the last 6 months that I've been working from home, and I don't think I'll need it for the next 6, because the existing pairs would work just fine. So is that a clear and present danger for the next 6 months, or do you think the market is wide enough any which ways to get in new buyers?
Again, there are two parts to this one. One is, as you said, you haven't felt the need for buying a brown or a black shoe, but chances are you have probably felt the need for buying a comfortable pair of slip-ons, maybe a sandal, maybe active shoes for your fitness regime, to go with your fitness regime, which has taken more center stage than ever before. People are more worried about their immunity levels, want to be more fit than earlier. So demand has shifted in that direction. We've seen that. We've been able to adopt because of our local supply chains, our own factories being able to adapt our supplies to make sure that we were able to provide that. That's happened. and I think that's one of the things that has helped us get some of the demand back. The other reality is that in times like these, I think it's important for brands, trusted brands like Bata, who've been with India since now 89 years, to really step up, make sure that the consumers feel confident in stepping out, in coming into our stores, in buying their footwear, especially as the festive period comes up, as a little bit of getting out of home, limited gatherings happen. Those are typically, as I said, good triggers for purchase of footwear. So I'm sure you will also, as you go into the festive period, want to change, indulge a little bit in retail therapy, and take that forward. So we're banking on that as we go into the next 3 months.
Yeah, and all probably brick and mortar, because online might not give me still that feeling of the retail therapy. Actually, speaking of that, just a couple of things, last couple of questions. Won't ask you to crystal ball gaze, but do the last 6 months alter your brick and mortar expansion plans at all? Also, I'm coupling this with the first answer that you gave, wherein you seem to have tasted some success with those innovative models, which might complement or replicate or substitute for, the need for 3 brick and mortar stores vis-a-vis 2, because the newer avenues that you're trying might actually supplement that.
Yeah. So one of the legs of the strategy that we've been following over the last 3-4 years was to take Bata into even more towns in the country. Despite our history, we've been really having our own stores only in about 600 odd towns. There's a huge opportunity in the smaller towns for us. And what this pandemic has done, my own hypothesis is, a lot of the smaller town people used to come into the bigger towns to do their shopping, especially when it was about wedding shopping or special occasion shopping. With that not being available, we are seeing even more interest from the smaller towns. We had started off a big campaign of franchise stores in towns with population between 1 lakh and 3 lakh pop straight up, which was gathering steam. We now have 180 such franchise stores. That has really caught a lot of momentum now. We've opened almost 20 stores post the lockdown in those kind of towns. We think we will be able to open another 30 such stores, even as the stores in the bigger towns may not be the focus of our activity in the next 6 to 9 months. So I think from that point of view, in line with the demand that we have seen much stronger from the smaller towns, we are seeing also our own brick and mortar strategy moving, mirroring that. Also in line what we do every year, we do go in and evaluate our full real estate model portfolio, and evaluate which stores need to be expanded, which one of those need to move because trade areas have changed, etc. And that will continue even as we go into the next year.
Okay, last question, Mr. Kataria, and that is, what does this do to numbers? Now, I do not want you to say any specific numbers, but I'm just trying to correlate what happened in FY20 or FY19, and what the last 6 months would probably do as well. Because when I look at FY20 or FY19, there were a lot of positives that I said. There were a few challenges. I mean, on the revenue EBITDA growth was lower single digits. The free cash flow dropped, dividend payout ratio dropped as well. I'm guessing FY21 is a bad year to talk about that. But how soon do you reckon you could be back to quote unquote winning ways, for lack of a better word, winning ways of sorts on those counts?
Yeah. So just to put your last year in context, actually till February you were doing quite well. It was March, which does tend to be a big month for us, because we also start doing our school shoes dispatches, etc. Impacted last year quite negatively, just that month, and especially the lockdown in the last 15 days. So overall, I think the direction was right. We were continuing the momentum. We were seeing new sources of growth, which in my view as we come out of the pandemic, this year will be a bit of a different scenario, impacted quite severely by the pandemic. But as we come out of it, our sources of growth continue to be very strong for us. Franchise and small town growth, as I have talked about, our non-retail stores, so through institution business, through distribution business, going into multi-brand outlets, which was for the last 4 quarters was growing in very high double digit, I think has lots of room to grow, lots of market share growth for us. That will continue. The digital enabled business, and I don't think I need to underline that more. You've heard that from all avenues, I'm sure, will continue to grow. In our bigger towns, our direction into getting more into the comfort and fashion merchandise will also come back as we come out of the pandemic. For this year, honestly, less said the better. We are looking to kick out 2020 and really get ready again for the year ahead.
Yeah, boy, I must say, for more reasons than 31st December 2020 would be the happiest day for almost every human being on earth, because 2020 will be behind us then. But great, Mr. Kataria, lovely talking to you today. But we look forward to talk to you post your numbers, I mean, on the day or a day later, to just try and get a sense of the numbers as well, because understandably, you can't talk numbers right now. But thanks for the strategy talk, though.
Sure, my pleasure.
Yeah, it was lovely talking to you, Mr. Kataria. Thanks for joining in, and stay safe.
Take care.
Yeah. Viewers, thanks for tuning into this edition of The Talking Point.